Hello, my name is Dr. Christine Moon, and I'm here to present Strategies for Measuring Attention, Saliency, and Luminance in Cities, an ongoing collaborative research project led by myself and Biana Bogosian with cognitive neuroscientist Dr. Ying Wu and her team Sydney Kessler, Wei-Chen Liu, and Chi-Yuan Chang. Before I begin, I would like to thank the SOM Research Foundation for their generous grant for making this research possible. To my knowledge, SOM has granted the largest research fund awarded by an architectural firm to focus on neuroscience and architecture. This grant has provided us the opportunity to address concerns related to humanizing high density by establishing new processes of design that bring neuroscientific modalities into the architectural and urban design processes and thinking. Our research originally began this February with our recent competition entry for LA Lights the Way, which was a call to design the next street lighting fixture for the city of Los Angeles. This competition called to rethink the existing standards and guidelines to provide appropriate luminance levels for various neighborhoods and programs along the streetscape. We began by looking at the scenes around Los Angeles during day and night, and understood that a general assumption exists that various types of streetlights are adequate for sensory and spatial acuity. Our competition group was a team of experts from different fields, including architecture, art, urban planning, lighting, and neuroscience. Biana Bogosian and I led the design efforts, with notable Los Angeles artist and designer Jerry Kavanaugh with her expertise in color and the heritage of LA's culture, Eames Dimitrios' highly imaginative and conscious approach to art making for the society at large, Eric Yesayan for his knowledge of urban policies in the greater area of Los Angeles, James Benya and Deborah Burnett's years of expertise in lighting design, and Fred Marks and Ying Wu for their research in neuroscience that helped frame some of the key questions about how we engage light in the city. Our proposal explored LA's rich culture for design with types of lampposts and colors that evolved through the years. Our mission was not only to provide sufficient luminance for visibility of the environment with state-of-the-art environmental sensors and signages for wayfinding and cultural banners, but to determine in what ways people were affected by it. A survey of field literature suggests that our cognitive representation of an urban environment depends largely on the allocation of visual attention as we navigate spaces. One of the important lines of inquiry would be to seek the relationship between bottom-up, perceptually driven, and top-down, semantically driven processes during real-world navigation to help inform street illumination design. Thus, a pre-experiment assumption was that, relative to daytime conditions, night viewing tend to be associated with less robust cognitive maps of the environment. For our continued research on neuroscience and illumination, which extended beyond the competition, we conducted research inquiry with Dr. Ying Wu and her team at the Schwartz Center for Computational Neuroscience at UC San Diego. Within this scope, our main research question was, how is visual attention modulated by luminance conditions during the day versus at night? In other words, do people's fixations tend to be longer or more clustered on illuminated regions of a scene at night relative to daytime? We determine visual attention by measuring eye gaze fixations in a visual field to see how people react to saliency in two contexts, day and night. Furthermore, we asked, how are people's distributed patterns of fixation influenced by day versus night illumination? And how does this distributed pattern impact visual salience? For our experiment, we favored using virtual reality in order for us to conduct the research in the lab. This gave us a better controllability of our data and allowed us to repeat the test in the same manner with different subjects. Additionally, current VR headsets come with integrated eye gaze tracking ability, which was ideal for our studies. Please note that due to COVID and the challenges of getting into the lab, our workflow was hindered and we were only able to initiate a pilot study. Therefore, instead of reaching for any conclusions, our purpose today is to present the methods and processes that we used to measure the attention levels based on luminance. Our setup consisted of using the Vive Pro Eye VR headset and capturing videos of the contact using GoPro 360 camera and mobile phone. For this experiment, we chose a different urban context, this time being downtown San Diego. You can see here our path of travel. We first began by capturing videos of identical routes by driving through the city during day and night, and then recruited healthy adults to passively view the videos for us to measure their patterns of visual attention. Then, to begin analyzing our data, we first ran an object detection algorithm of our videos to study what objects could be detected in each video sequence. The goal here was to create a database that we could compare against the features that the subject was focusing on. To determine the saliency of a visual field, we looked at entropy. Entropy is a mathematical formulation of the average information or uncertainty in a system. In computer vision, measures of entropy can mimic the human visual system in decomposing high versus low saliency regions of a scene, that is, areas where contrasts tend to occur with high versus low frequency. Our plan is to compare the average entropy value of fixated regions in day versus night scenes in order to understand how luminance conditions modulate sensitivity to salience. Then, to calculate the salient information in the visual field, we created entropy videos for day and night. We began to analyze our entropy videos by calculating the entropy per frame by averaging the entropy values of all pixels within each video frame. This plot shows the distribution of those averages for each video. By the way, this is a kernel density estimate, or KDE for short, which is similar to a histogram. Unlike a discrete histogram, it plots a smooth, continuous curve that gives estimate of the true underlying distribution based on the sample pool given. The day and night conditions center around different entropy values, and the night condition looks to have slightly higher range than the day condition, but on average, lower entropy values. Based on this, we can conclude that the day and night conditions have differing levels of entropy. Running a t-test confirms this observation as statistically significant. We also looked at the average luminance, defined in this case as grayscale values for each video frame. This plot shows a similar distribution to the entropy plot, though with much greater differences as we would expect from the luminance values between day and night. Next, we wanted to measure if the difference between salience, or entropy, and luminance is reflected in human visual attention as well. That is, will the patterns of allocation of visual attention differ as a function of the different overall levels of entropy that characterize day versus night scenes? To measure visual attention, our proxy for visual attention was eye tracking, specifically measuring fixations and what the respective entropy luminance values are for those fixations. We want to specifically pay attention here to eye tracking as opposed to other gaze moments such as saccades, smooth movement, or blinks. To collect these fixations, we set up our virtual environment with a 2D screen that plays the video recordings of the downtown area. We had our subject don a VR headset and view each of the videos in succession while sitting at a fixed distance to the virtual screen. This was also done in VR ultimately because we want to take this into 360 environment where the subject can freely move their head and look around like they would in normal situation. For now, the subject was given directions to simply look at the 2D video for the full length and to keep their head as still as possible to minimize noise. Their gaze was recorded by the headset at 90 samples per second. After the experiment, we pre-processed the gaze data to identify fixations. This was done using an algorithm based on angular velocity and eye openness. The full fixation detection methods is described in the article The Toby Fixation Filter Algorithm Detection Document by Olson. Fixations were defined as being longer than 150 milliseconds with at least 75 milliseconds between them. For each fixation, we got the average entropy over the duration of that fixation within a 32 pixel region, the start time and end time, as well as the total length of the duration. Each gaze sample was associated with a point on the video for which there was an associated entropy value. For each fixation, which contained a series of XYZ coordinates or gaze samples, we averaged the entropy value at each gaze sample within the duration of the fixation to get one entropy value per fixation. We found that regardless of day or night conditions, the subject favored looking at places with a high value of entropy. In fact, These distributions are nearly identical. This result might lead us to believe that there might be an entropy value that attracts attention regardless of the situation. Here, we plot the distribution of the entropy values of all pixels within a frame. The star represents the entropy value for a fixation, if there is one. Over the course of the first 10 seconds of the video, slow down here for easier visualization, we can see the overall entropy distribution change frame by frame and see where the fixation falls within that distribution. Fixations tend to occur over areas of high entropy, though not the highest entropy. Unlike entropy values, in regards to luminance, which is the grayscale values of each pixel, there was a slight difference between day and night. In the first minute of the video, the distribution of fixations tended toward lower luminance levels for the night as compared to the day. Though this may not be surprising as night has a much lower luminance level on average than the day. Unlike entropy, it would seem that visual attention is not drawn toward a steady level of luminance, but may vary depending on the level of luminance present. For one of our research questions, which was, do people's fixations tend to be longer or more clustered on illuminated regions of a scene at night relative to daytime? We plotted the distribution of the lengths, which are durations of fixations. Much like the entropy values, these seem to be identical regardless of day or night condition, leading us to believe that the duration of fixations may have nothing to do with the lighting of a setting. Additionally, there seems to be no significant correlation between entropy value and duration of fixation. In fact, for both day and night scenes, the most dense clusters of fixations seem to center around entropy values of 5.0 to 6.5. This outcome is remarkable given that our prior analysis revealed lower overall entropy in night scenes. So what are the implications of these findings? Saliency, as measured by entropy, may have a different interaction with visual attention than luminance does. And for designers, this may be relevant to know what levels of entropy design can evoke. Depending on the intention of the designer and the scope of work, one may want to design around the high levels of entropy to attract gaze, or low levels of entropy to blend into the background. As we continue with our research, our next steps would be 1. To continue to look for more patterns for more subjects, attending to a specific level of entropy regardless of day and night context with consistent durations and slight differences of attention regarding luminance, and to see if they are similar to our initial pilot. 2. To decipher if we do tend to seek out areas of high entropy, why is that? That is, could there be a specific level of entropy that grabs attention, and how would this level vary from person to person? 3. To see what features of design correlate to high levels of entropy. For this, we can start by syncing our object detection map over the entropy map to determine where and what the participants are looking at relative to the entropy luminance values. And finally, to see if we can measure how the luminance value could influence people's attention and memory. Furthermore, with the capacity to measure salience of design features in our environment, designers can explore new territories of data-driven processes that centers the body as registers of the performativity of the built environment. We can clearly measure various physical features of the environment. However, this study lends to more considerations of subtle features to include psychological features and psychogeographical features. Eli During describes a post-metropolis city of the 21st century where the spatio-temporal reorganization of the conditions of attention with the advent of new media such as Internet of Things and smartphones have effectively created an attentional regime. But as During describes, the spatio-temporal reorganization of attention are flows of consciousness that affects and is affected by our behavior. He states, new technologies of information and communication have recently begun to double as technologies of attention, and to determine what could be called a new attentional regime. Yet this phenomenon cannot be attributed solely to the fact that the diffusion of temporal object plays a direct influence on the user's psyche. The process through which flows of consciousness tend to be synchronized points at a deeper level to the spatio-temporal reorganization of the very conditions of attention. We now live in a fully networked society where the boundaries of data in our space are fused with boundaries of data in our body. If architecture of the 20th century can be defined by advances made in building technologies, architecture of the 21st century will be defined by advancing human technology into the built environment. In closing, I would like to end by giving thanks to Fred Marks at ANFA, Eduardo Macano, Ziping Yung, and Ying Wu at the Schwartz Center for Computational Neuroscience at UC San Diego, and the New School of Architecture and Design for giving me the opportunity to work with them these past years to develop this body of research. Thank you.